Ke nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Kaulavani Bhuchanane Devasesha Sunyavadi Pashtatara Satarinai Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. One second, I just got to check. I want to. Kolkata is 9:34. Delhi 9. Anyway, Hare Krishna. Krishna's mystic potency. All right, so let me do some sharing, etc. And we'll pick up from where we left off last week. Last week we finished the week before last, excuse me, when we didn't have last week. We finished chapter 17, which is all about, and the chapters preceding that was all about unsteady devotional service. So we've made some progress, and now we're on steady devotional service. So today we'll be covering that. The chapter is actually entitled Steady Devotional Service Leading to Taste, but we might not get to the ruchi aspect of it tonight. Let's see how we go. But everyone can hear me okay? My voice is not too soft. Okay, no
It's
complaints.
okay, thank you. Good.
It's okay.
It's okay, great. So let me share, and that's going to give me a minute or so to sort things out here. All right, now let me, remember last time we had that nice layout feature. So let me try again. Over the shoulder, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Over the shoulder. It's okay with everyone? Hare Krishna. So yeah, very exciting. This is chapter 18. Steady devotion and taste, nishta and ruchi, in the gradual progression of our spiritual development. Chapter 16 and 17, we got into quite some detail about anatta nivritti, and in general, the removal of unwanted habits. That's what we was describing at the stage of unsteady devotional service. And I think one of the main takeaways from that was that the biggest obstacles that are difficult to hang around for a long time is offenses to the holy name. Other obstacles, for instance, sins committed that we did before we took up devotional service and their consequential reactions are generally easily overcome. But we was highlighting that offenses to the holy name in executing devotional service are more difficult to overcome. And that's what is the underlying cause of being unsteady in our devotional practice. So that was the last couple of chapters, 16 and 17. This chapter, 18, we're going to look at general principles. We're going to give some details, but general principles of steadiness. And importantly, the role that it actually plays, a very important role, because it's from steady devotional service that we can actually awaken to real devotion. Yeah, and especially at the stages of nishta and uruchi. So we'll be looking at that. Again, any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. It's always nice to hear from yourselves at the other end. And still devotees coming in, so just letting them in. Hare Krishna. Now, hopefully the experience is as unwanted habits, they leave, and where they leave, generally they're like in the heart. They're in the chitta, or they're in the heart. Yeah. So as these unwanted habits leave, to that degree that they leave, then passion and ignorance decrease, and then the mode of goodness becomes increasingly dominant. Okay, one of the symptoms of devotees becoming more steady, that passion, ignorance decrease, and the mode of goodness becomes more prominent. So that means one's not distracted or one's not subject to the 5 obstacles that we described in the previous 2 chapters. So sleeping during devotional activities, say generally the favorite place to sleep is Srimad Bhagavatam class. Not a good way to say it. Often it can be, sometimes it may be due to devotees' fatigue of doing so much devotional service, or it might just be because they're unsteady and they're subjected to the lower modes of nature, specifically the mode for ignorance, so they're falling asleep in Srimad Bhagavatam class. Could you imagine anyone falling asleep when Sukadeva Goswami is speaking? I don't think so. And so once these 5 obstacles, one sleep, distraction, okay, so you're not sleepy, but you're distracted, or one is just indifferent, one has no particular interest in the subject matter. The inclination to commit sinful activities, and also a taste for sense enjoyment. Now, these things, as passion and ignorance go down and goodness becomes more prominent, they dwindle to insignificance. Yeah, and then devotees are finally achieve a stage called nishta. Yeah. So now, different, unlike the mode of, unlike the lower modes, goodness is conducive for spiritual life. You know, hopefully we realize that the lower modes are not very conducive. The mode of ignorance is not very conducive for spiritual life, nor is the mode of passion. Also, if one is in a mode of ignorance, then you might give them instructions to get passionate. Yeah. But generally, mode of goodness is very, very conducive for spiritual development. You could say it's an enlivened state. Devotees become happy. One of the symptoms of the mode of goodness is happiness. That's its natural symptom. Even, we mentioned this before, even without discussing spiritual life, if someone adopts sattvic principles in their pious life, they will become naturally happy materially, not spiritually. So what to speak of someone who's practicing spiritual life? Then there's a natural happiness. And this verse here explains this nicely. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 1:219. Tato rajastamo bhava kamo lapjayasjaye ed chete eda anavidam siddhim sattvi prasidate. So nice verse to learn. These verses in this part of Srimad Bhagavatam are wonderful verses. Okay, as soon as irrevocable loving service, so that's nishta, is established within the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, and the symptoms of passion and ignorance is lust, desire, and hankering disappear from the heart. Then devotee is established in goodness and becomes completely happy. Now, a warning here. The reason I'm giving this class because I managed to get more data on my phone that I'm using as a hotspot for the internet. And this data is being purchased by the DD Worship Ministry because I use my computer for meetings, etc. And I've just got a message that's just come through that my data is over. So it might go blank any minute. So before it does, I apologize. I was upgraded to 100. I don't know. I don't understand all the gigabytes and gigabytes, what it all means, but I was upgraded to 100. Anyway, let's keep going. Let's depend upon Krishna. All right. Now, what this indicates, okay, so one is at the stage of steadiness. The symptoms of passion ignorance may still linger in the heart, but they don't have so much, but with not with but with ever diminishing force. So in other words, they do not influence your behavior. And they may still be there. Like I think that's the example is given. If you've got wine and you put it in a clay pot and you tip the wine out, it's still gonna have that scent of wine. So they may still be there, the symptoms of passion, ignorance, but less force. So one is then they no longer influence the devotee's behavior at steadiness. At unsteadiness, they influence the devotee's behavior. But one is at a state of steadiness that they have less influence, though it's still there to some degree. So this is a good state to be in. This is the platform that we want to get on, the stage of Nishta. Okay. Any questions? Just devotees who just come in, please feel free to ask. Yeah. Yeah, I was reading through this just before we open up this evening. It's very interesting subject, a steady devotional service. So one of the symptoms of this stage also is that devotees prior to this stage, they spend most of their energy goes on battling their conditioned nature, almost a war with their conditioned self, lust, anger, greed, etc., envy. So, but the stage of at this when one is at the stage of steadiness and more predominant goodness, they can give their full attention to serving Krishna with not so much distraction that there was in the stage of unsteady devotional service. So because they can give more full attention, they get more spiritual strength. Yes. So this is could say this unwavering, undivided standard of service. This is the characteristic of Nishta. And you could say it's equivalent to the well-known verse 1854 in Bhagavad Gita. Anyone know 1854 in the Bhagavad Gita? Any Bhakta Sastri students out there? I give you 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Brahma, as soon as I say the first line, you'll go, oh yes, I know that verse. Brahma Bhuta Prashana Atma na Sochate na Kansati Sama Saveshu Bhuteshu. And the last line, someone can give me that? 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Mat Bhaktim Labate Param. One achieves my devotional service. Yeah. Let me just read the verse here. I don't have it on the slide. One who is thus transcendently situated, but once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes Prashana Atma. Anyone knows what Prashana Atma means? Becomes fully joyful. And because that joy is so much that he or she doesn't lament, nor do they desire, because they're fully joyful from the activities of bhakti. And they're equally disposed towards all jivas. Yeah. They don't have any prejudice because they're so affluent with spiritual happiness. Yeah. So, it's an interesting subject, but it's a different subject. In that state, one qualifies for pure devotional service, but it's also a symptom of the practice of pure devotional service. Anyway, so devotees at this stage, Nishta, that's the qualification for stepping up to transcendental service described there, Labate Param, Parabhakti. So So, in other words, what we're saying here is that the platform of steady devotional service, it's not a transcendent state, but still it's a very wonderful, it means it's a way you could say Maharaj describes it as a wonderful springboard or signboard. You are going in the right direction. Yeah. And it's just described as a springboard by which we can dive into the ocean of devotional bliss. Does that sound attractive? Head first. Go to the top diving board. The top diving board is the mode of goodness. Then dive into the ocean of devotional bliss. You cannot do it from the mode of ignorance or passion. So again, there's a whole presentation we could do on the importance of the mode of goodness. And we've already mentioned it a few times. Raj has mentioned it a few times in Suddha Bhakti Cintamani. Now, the significant when in the mode of or in Anishta, the thinning of unwanted habits at the stage of steadiness indicates also that one is beginning to win the fight with the otherwise the unruly mind. Before that stage, this stage one is more or less hostage to the unruly mind in the modes of passion and ignorance. But here, at the stage of steadiness and the rise of prominence of goodness, one is beginning to kind of win into some degree the battle with the mind. The mind is becoming one's friend rather than one's enemy. Yeah. As described in Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter. Wonderful descriptions there. Yeah. So here, also at this stage, one's intelligence becomes more clear. And Marge describes it that it dominates a devotee's steady behavior. Because their intelligence is clear, they know what to say, how to say, what to do to not become entangled in the lower modes, to know how to move around without becoming entangled in converse or in, you could say, in unbecoming arguments or intense disagreements. Say we could say with Vaishnavas, yeah, one's intelligence, you remember to guide you clearly. Yeah, it's a mode of goodness. You see clearly how you can maintain that sattvic mode. You know, you may feel angry, you may feel by the modes of passion and ignorance. Remember, it's still there. So you're still going to perhaps feel influenced by, say, anger or envy or say something, symptom of lower modes. It hasn't disappeared, but it's the mode of goodness. You have the strength not to act according to that lower nature. Yeah. So therefore, because you're purified, you've got more intelligence is more purified, it's sattvic, so it dominates the devotee's behavior. Yeah. And also one becomes less I, me, and mine, like in the modes of passion and ignorance, say devotees practicing devotional service in the modes of passion and ignorance. A lot of it, their focus is very much I-ness and mine-ness. You did this to me, or got it. You're thinking of your own self more than Krishna, your own specific hang-ups, your own specific troubles and problems and this and that. It's all I, me, and mine. Janasya moho aham mameti. But here, where one's intelligence is more clear, one's life becomes more Krishna-centered. How can I serve Krishna more? How can I serve Krishna better? How can I serve the Vaishnavas? This is all the symptom of the mode of all being steady in devotional service. Now, having said that, one's attraction to Krishna, it still lacks spontaneity. That will come at the stage of ruchi, and we might not get there in today's session. So that spontaneous attraction to Krishna will be somewhat lacking still. One is still, how can I say, one is still inspired by the platform of intelligence rather than taste, which is good, but that's just a difference between the stage of nishta and ruchi. Ruchi things get a bit more spontaneous. Not necessarily exactly raganuga bhakti, that's a different discussion, but just for the way your inspiration. Yeah. So that's the difference between nishta and ruchi. Okay. Now, what actually spiritualizes devotees' freedom from bodily identification? Um, let me just read this sentence here. And although transcendental knowledge spiritualizes the devotee's bodily identification, yeah, same thing. And along with it, it spiritualizes one's attachment um, to the body's paraphernalia. Um, Still, one's material conditioning still makes itself felt, sometimes without warning. Marge describes it like a belligerent prisoner of war who keeps on making a disturbance. Okay, he's been captured, but he keeps trying to escape, this prisoner of war. Right, interesting uh, comparison. So, I don't know. I mean, devotees have been practicing, those who are listening here, many of you are senior devotees. So I'm sure you're experiencing are on the stage minimum of nishta, fixed, been practicing chanting many years, you're able to act in a sattvic way, but still we feel the material conditioning still makes itself felt. Often it comes without warning. Yeah. So that means we still got some way to go. But still, it's good. We're steady, and the lower nature is not becoming prominent, but still we can feel it. Its influence is felt: lust, again, anger, envy, greed, etc., or even attachments. You know. Now, Marge here he brings in Bhaktivinoda Tagore. He gives his opinion, Bhaktivinoda Tagore. He says, after the initial awakening of pure faith, that's what we described a good few weeks ago, the first stages of pure faith. He gives the next step after pure faith is steadiness. So, in other words, he considers the purification of unwanted habits that we discussed in the last two chapters to be nothing more than the symptoms of rising faith. Yeah. Now, so that basically means that with the pure faith is the minimum currency. Remember, we gave that definition of pure faith. Can anyone just remind us what a definition of pure faith is? I'll ask Alexander Fortune.
Unflinching trust in something sublime.
Yes, it's not exactly wrong, but not exactly right either.
That's what Prabhupada's
Yeah,
definition
perhaps
was.
you're right. But what I'm not thinking more, the definition is that you know everything, you have complete faith that if you take to the principles of bhakti, sharanagati, you have nothing to worry about. That's just my paraphrasing of it. Yeah. Krishna's going to take care. You're giving yourself to Krishna and Krishna alone. Yeah, not this deva, not this, not this, Krishna. You're complete. That's a definition of pure faith that we gave earlier. Yeah. So, so that pure faith is a minimum, you could say, currency by which one can chant the holy name. Nishta gives you the currency by which you can focus on the Lord's form. Okay, we mentioned that before as well. So Nishta, at the stage pure faith, you can chant the holy name, and through the development of your chanting, you may, at the stage of Nishta, you may be able to go into realms of meditating upon Krishna's form as it manifests from the chanting from pure chanting, or at least chanting without the fence. Okay, another interesting detail. Yeah. So also when devotee reaches the stage of nishta, they can perceive Krishna's form in their mind's eye. You understand? In their mind's eye. They're meditating on Nam, and they may remember the deity, Londonishvara. They may close their eyes and chant, and as they're chanting, they're able to meditate upon the form. You can try that at home. It's very nice. Yeah. Actually, in the I think it's mentioned in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita that is described. You can chant in front of the deities, and you can keep your eyes open, and you can be looking at the deity. But more powerful, actually, is to close your eyes and meditate upon what you have seen. It takes the meditation a little bit deeper. Okay, so try that at home. Okay, so comes from steady devotional service. Yeah, they're able to perceive Krishna's form in their mind's eye. So, so what's happening here is that the transition from unsteady to steady, it has significantly increases the ability for the mind to be absorbed in Krishna. Yeah. And that's pretty significant. You know, steady devotional service increases, you have more ability for your mind to be absorbed in Krishna. And that's what we want. You know, the International Society for Mind being absorbed in Krishna. Yeah. So then and this is where we have this there's many rules and regulations given in bhakti, but anyone can tell what the two prominent rules are in
Always remember Krishna, never forget him.
yes, 10 points for Tripad. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. Yeah. This is this stage. This is the stage of steady devotional service. You can do that. Of course, only a pure unadulterated devotee can personify this statement completely. Yeah, but still, one has more ability to remember Krishna. Yeah. So again, when we're describing unsteady practice, devotees are fighting to fix their mind on the Lord. I think we described last time. It's amazing. Only conditioned souls can chant Hare Krishna and forget Krishna. Can be distracted. Yeah. So the beginning of unsteady right in the very beginning, a few classes ago, very difficult to fix a mind on anything, let alone Krishna. Yeah, there's one really wonderful devotee in our. I won't mention his name. He's a really wonderful devotee, but I can see he's a young devotee. I think he's doing better now, but just watching him in japa, he cannot keep his mind still for 1 second. It's just completely scatterbrained. That's okay. He's just beginning devotional practice, but after some time, he keeps on eating prasadam. He keeps on associating with devotees. keeps on rendering devotional service, then gradually you get the ability to fix the mind on the Lord. Yeah. So, and even if sometimes unsteady devotional service, one does fix the mind on the Lord, but generally, mundane thoughts generally intrude. Yeah. Now, that's unsteady meditation. Now, again, still, if one's steady, still you got a bit of stuff in the cupboard still. You still got some skeletons there. So you're still going to have things coming up within the mind, but it's not going to distract. It's not going to distract you. It's not going to, yeah. It's not going to distract you. It's not going to cause. It's not going to manifest as unbecoming behavior. But it's still there. The dirt's still there in the heart. So now, in contrast, steady practice, the meditation on Krishna is more substantial. Yeah. This is when devotees' thoughts are relatively free from contamination. Yeah. Even then, still, the unruly mind does occasionally divert one's attention from Krishna to mundane things. Anyone experience that? Anyone experience chanting japa and you're focusing on japa and you start thinking of President Trump? Yikes. Or what comes to mind is what you absorb, So occasionally it diverts their attention, but not like it was when one is at the stage of unsteady devotional service. Sometimes now these distractions, they come often unannounced. They're coming from, they don't announce themselves. They just manifest, seem to come from well, where did that come from? So sometimes devotees are perplexed, oh, well, what happened? I was just meditating upon Krishna. Then all of a sudden I'm meditating this stupid, mundane thing, What happens? So it can become quite perplexing. Maharaj describes here, he goes to the extent that devotees may be meditating on Charan Leela. Anyone know what Charan Leela is? That's when Krishna goes out in the morning to herd the cows. There's beautiful description. So a devotee may be attracted in that way, maybe reading that, maybe meditating like that. And all of a sudden some mundane thought or distraction comes to mind. Okay. Now, also, Marge brings out here that the word steady, it relates specifically to the consistency of devotees' acts of devotion, which primarily is their chanting, hearing, and remembering. So also, as well as that, it also refers to their consistently displaying the qualities favorable for devotion. For instance, humility, mercifulness, and tolerance. So these 6 things. So it refers to their acts of devotion is steady, their chanting is steady, their hearing is steady, their remembering is steady. And they have specific qualities, the qualities of humility, being merciful, and tolerant. These are also consistent. Now, Marge opens up a discussion here that there are some opinions with our acharyas of which steadiness develops first. Is it the physical, and then the vocal, and then the mental? So physical, you're paying obeisances, you're tending, devotional engagements, then vocal, and then mental. Now Prabhupada, he would praise devotees if they were doing well in preaching, even if their chanting was unsteady. Prabhupada would praise devotees for their solid achievements, even if their chanting was unsteady. And sometimes if a devotee's mind is flickering between difficult with their mind, Prabhupada would encourage devotees to to remain steady in chanting and hearing. Is a short quote from Prabhupada. If you chant and hear, then remembrance will automatically come. So, Maharaj then, so from the Prabhupada's statements, so steadiness first appears in the devotee's physical activities with the body, then one's words. Each gets more difficult, you see, one's words and then one's mind. This is also coming from Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur in the Madhurya Kadambini. I'm just reading it at the moment, actually. Very interesting. So, and then Maharaj brings out as a scenario that devotees may be steady in their book distribution or deity worship, but then they're distracted in their japa, maybe gossiping during japa, or they're falling asleep in class. So they're steady in books, steady in worshiping a deity, steady in their service. When they sit down to hear Bhagavatam, so it's a symptom of being unsteady. Yeah, so sometimes in this physical steadiness appears easy to achieve than the mental. Yeah. So there may be devotees who are capable of sitting and they're apparently focused in japa, but they will admit that their minds often wander. Okay, so they're able to sit, they're able to chant japa, they're not gossiping, they're not being distracted, they're focused on japa, but their mind may wander. Yeah. So the conclusion here again is that steadiness of the mind is more elusive. Yeah. And if we go to Bhagavad Gita 3:42, you know that verse where above the senses is the mind, above the mind is the intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul. So that what we just described is consistent with that. Yeah. So yes. Let me just read this here. And someone other, we've still got some data left. We're still going. What's the time? Okay. Am I over time? No. What time did we start? Someone could unmute? Because I got caught short a bit. I wasn't expecting
40 minutes ago, Prabhu.
Okay.
5. Sorry, it's funny.
Okay, so
Prabhu, can I ask something?
yes, please, Baba Jamavati. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, what you mentioned here, everything is very important and very relevant.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
my question is about people with neurodivergence, because what you described is for neurotypical people, and because I'm working on that subject, sorry. And for what I noticed, for neurodivergent people to concentrate is very
Say that word
hard.
again.
It's very difficult.
Neurodivergent. I'm sorry, I missed the word.
Yes, neurodivergent. For them, it's very difficult to control the
What's that?
mind. It's disability.
What is that?
This is
I haven't heard that before.
neurodivergence. There are two kinds of people. Neurotypical, mind is working in one direction, and neurodivergent, when mind is working in different direction. They're more talented, but they're more active. So for them to concentrate is very difficult.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean
No
that they're lower devotees, they're less advanced or anything. No, just because their brains, their nature is working in different direction and they can't control. Because what I checked, what everything is saying in Shastras is for neurotypical people, but neurodivergent, they're not mentally ill, they're not discharged, they're not
that's a new
crazy.
word for me. But then fill it up with something devotional. If it
Yes, what
like
I noticed,
that,
yes.
then fill it up
Yes.
with devotional activities. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
Then the
but this is
purification
sounds
will be
because
there.
some were coming and saying, I cannot, and they feel very down because they feel like I'm not able to devote, I'm bad devotee or anything. But no, actually, they're doing their best to their
Yeah, just
ability.
encourage them to do their best. You know, there's various devotional activities one can be absorbed in. If they're not so acclimatized, it's difficult for them to sit down in a class for 2 hours or some. Then there's other, they can be involved in active devotional service more. So somehow or another try and help them and engage them somehow in some devotional activities, serving the Vaishnavas, serving the community in
Yes,
some way. And then they will gradually get purified. Yeah, and they
yes,
get
exactly.
Krishna's
This
grace
is
and mercy.
yeah how it's working. And my question was because some devotees when they're coming about requirements for initiation or recommendation, whatever, they complain that we can't remember the shlokas. It doesn't mean that
Well,
they're lazy.
at least
It
there's
doesn't
one
mean that they're
sloka.
hopeless.
But then there's one sloka that you should remember. You ready?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hare
And my
Krishna,
question,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
no,
Rama,
no,
Hare
yeah.
Rama, Rama Rama Hare. If you can remember that sloka, then you go back to Godhead.
Yeah, and I was thinking how neurodivergent in ISKCON is any support, anything, because this is tough practice. It's
Yeah,
for
then do what they
fans.
can. Just remember the Maha Mantra.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all they need to do. Yeah, remember the Maha Mantra. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay. Now let's pick up my notes. So the secondary characteristic is the consistency which devotees, interesting discussion here, which the qualities favorable for devotion become fixed in the devotee's character. So you find some devotees are humble, very tolerant and kind by nature or whatever. They're very humble, they're very tolerant and they're kind, but they're not very steady in the primary activities such as hearing and chanting. Normally it's going to see, yeah, the other day I was in Varshana, wonderful places, the Radharani's place. I went early in the morning and got there for the 7 o'clock, 7 a.m. darshan. And I met one Indian boy there, or kind of he met me, and he spoke very good English. And he was he took up Krishna consciousness a few years ago, being inspired by Amarendra and others. But then he got sidetracked in his practice and he's following another guru anyway, blah blah blah. But he was saying that he was very humble. He was like this for me, and he was taking the dust from my feet. He was like naturally humble, naturally good character. But he said he has this trouble. He finds chanting difficult, and he's quite inspired by smoking hashish at the moment. So we had an interesting discussion while we're waiting amongst the crowds for the temple to open. So I did some preaching to him. It was nice. But here's an example. So I tried to convince him that it's not a way to achieve bhakti by smoking hashish. So anyway, the point here is that some devotees, some persons very humble, they're tolerant, but as far as chanting and other things and hearing, no, it may not be there. Yeah, so they're consistent in the qualities favorable for devotion. Yeah. Now the secondary characteristics of steadiness, but because this steadiness is not matched by steadiness in sense control, it's more of a sign of previous piety from previous good deeds than any serious Krishna consciousness. Sometimes you might meet persons like that. They're very humble. It's good, very tolerant, very kind, but they can't chant 16 rounds, you know? So where's that coming from? They come from pious background. Now, other devotees, it may be different. They may sometimes be intolerant. These are more, you could say more devotees come from the West versus the East. You know, they may be more intolerant sometimes. They may see them become proud, sometimes anger, you know, older, yet they're very steady in their devotional practices. They chant Hare Krishna, 16 rounds. They go on, they do their service. So they're displaying the primary characteristic of steadiness in the absence of secondary ones. Now, obviously, both is better. Yeah. So, in other words, devotees in the second category, they're very serious about their Krishna consciousness, yet they're immature in the development of Vaishnava traits. So sometimes the persons in the first category, they will have a critical eye to those in the second category. They're doing wonderful devotional service, but their eye not really. So ideally, of course, we should be steady both in devotional practices and in one's display of qualities favorable for devotion. That's ideal. This is what we want. Okay. Okay, moving on. Have no fear. Hare Krishna. Okay, let me just get my bearings here. Yes, yeah, I just mentioned it actually, that sometimes persons, materialistic persons, or even Maharaj describes as neophyte devotees, they put more emphasis on the presence of devotional qualities than on the strict observance of devotional practices. I just mentioned that. Yeah, they put more. One sense, yes, but in another sense, no. Yeah. So in other words, the more that person may be more attracted to a devotee who's kind, soft-spoken, but who neglects these 16 rounds, than a strict sadhaka who lacks all the traits of Vaishnava or may lack Vaishnava etiquette and culture. The more attracted to a soft-spoken devotee who neglects the 16 rounds. Yeah. Then someone is very strict, but who might, to some degree, lack the proper etiquette and culture. Now, Marge brings out here, the point I'm making here is that, but it's a mistake to compare a person of refined culture and one who is or has refined personal qualities with a devotee who displays being steady in the practices of hearing and chanting. So, in other words, he may be very cultured, but one cannot advance in spiritual life, cannot advance in Krishna consciousness without becoming serious about devotional practices. And this is what I told this boy at Varsana. Okay, you're not going to make any advancement unless he said he had trouble dealing with rules and regulations, but he wanted to achieve Raga Bhakti. I had to explain to him, no, you have to follow the regulated principles of freedom. You have to, yeah. So being cultured is not enough. You may be cultured and well-behaved, but unless one becomes serious about devotional practices, one cannot make any advancement. Then on the other side, if it's a strict devotee who's unrefined, if they, out of their pride, unrefined characteristics, if they offend Vaishnavas because of their immaturity, even their steady sadhana will not bear the fruit of them being advanced in spiritual life. Yeah. So the other one, they're very cultured, but they don't practice, they're not going to make advancement. Someone may be very serious about 16 rounds and doing their service and chopping the vegetables the right way and doing their service. But they're offensive to Vaishnavas. They're not going to make spiritual advancement either. Yeah. So, Neri, you had your hand raised?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes, please.
I have a question. So, at this stage, if a devotee is showing all the qualities that you're saying they should be showing, and at the same time they are steady in their devotional practices, like hearing, chant, and hearing and remembering, and all the other nine forms of devotional practices, except for chanting.
Uh-huh. Well, sooner or later, they won't be able to continue the Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smarana, Parasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. That comes out in a few slides, the importance or the underlying importance of chanting the holy name. Yeah. Okay, someone may not find it difficult to chant for one reason or another. So they're engaged in hearing Bhagavatam, they're engaged in some service, etc. And that's good. But you really want to encourage them to take up a regulated practice of chanting the Maha Mantra. Jiva Goswami actually says that all these 9 angas of bhakti, they cannot give their fruit unless it's accompanied by chanting. Yeah, it's the Yuga Dharma. So someone may be engaged in these 9 angas of bhakti, but it has to be accompanied with the chanting of the holy name. So you really want to lovingly bring such a person or devotee to get them to understand the importance of chanting the holy name. That is the essential practice. Yes. So did that answer the question or anything on that? Basically, I'm saying it's not good. It's not a good place to be.
Yeah, I know Srila Prabhupada says the minimum is 16 rounds.
Yeah.
But what if the devotee does just a few rounds, but high quality rounds, like they really put everything into those few rounds that they're doing?
Well, that's good. If they really put everything into the 5 rounds they're doing, they really put everything into it, then they get such a wonderful experience from that 5 rounds that they want to chant 6 rounds. And if they really sincerely sit down and chant 6 rounds without offense, they won't be able to resist chanting 7 rounds. And if they chant only 7 rounds without offense, nicely, then they will become the flower, and the attraction of Krishna's name will just inspire them to chant more. So if that's the case, encourage them. Okay, just chanting 4 rounds, fine. Chant nicely, sit down in one place, meditate deeply on the sound vibration, and then they will automatically be inspired to chant more. Unless they're absolutely determined to never chant 16 rounds. I haven't come across that yet. I will never chant 16 rounds. I only chant 5 rounds a day. Yeah, so that's one way to look at it, And also, if one wants to make tangible advancement in spiritual life, there's Guru Pad Ashraya, means taking shelter of a spiritual master. And we have the vows that we make at initiation, which is 16 rounds. But just say someone is just, they're just chanting 4 or 5 rounds. Great, fantastic, wonderful. That's a great achievement for anyone in the material world, But hopefully by chanting nicely, they won't be able to resist chanting more. Is it anything on that, Neri, Mother? I don't know exact context.
Yes, thank you so much, Prabhu.
Something to think about. Yeah. Okay, we've got 3 minutes. Someone other that has lasted. I think Krishna might have stretched out.
Prabhu, can I add to your question, comment?
Yes,
what I want to say, because if we want to chant just 4 rounds or 6 rounds, very pure
Yeah.
consciousness, very purified mind. We have to be in certain level of purity. And to reach that certain level of purity, we need, not how to say, it enables us chanting 16 rounds minimum. So it's like a cycle. Unless you chant 16 rounds with pure mind for some time, you cannot chant 4 or 6 rounds just with pure round. Less. You understand? So if you want to be honest and chant just 4 rounds, prior that, you have to chant at least 20 years or some with pure mind, 16 rounds minimum.
Yeah, it takes long. Was it?
Because you can't purify your consciousness. You
Yeah,
can't. It doesn't work like this.
that's the cleaning agent. Good point. You're mentioning Mother Jamavati. That's the cleaning agent, is the actual chanting of the holy name. And one time my Guru Maharaj said, quantity refines quality. Refines quality. Quantity refines the quality. So the more you chant, the more you can refine the quality of your chanting. The less you chant, the less you can, improve the quality of your chanting. Okay? That's another answer for you, Neri, Mother, by Mother Jamavati. Thank you, Mother Jamavati. Yeah. All right. Let's stop there. I'm going on my phone, and the hotspot is just now. My phone's got no battery left. So we'll stop there for this week, and hopefully next week we should be okay. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. And it's definitely Krishna's inspiration that made me open up what I thought was an hour before, just to see if everything worked. And there's devotees waiting to come in. It's Krishna, the master of mystics. So next week we'll be looking at, we haven't really opened up this slide yet, but we will. They're going to look at this. The awakening, then we get to Ruchi. What's that all about? The awakening of Ruchi, after Nishta, etc. Symptoms of Ruchi, etc. like that. So please join us next week, okay? For those who, so this week you achieve Nishta, well done. If you want Ruchi, you have to come next week. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Suddha Bhakti Cintamani ki
Thank you.
jai.
Shila
We go.
Hari
Murli
Krishna,
Manohara ki
Hari
jai. Thank you,
Ki
Prabhu.
jai. Thank you so much,
Hari
Prabhu.
Bol.
Hare Krishna. Hare
Hari. I'm going to press
Hare
the
Krishna.
end button. Then I'm all
Hare
going to disappear. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.